So I promised Rabbi Hellman 3 sessions. So this is our last session. I hope that it is memorable. Okay.
Yes.
So can we get started? Is everybody okay?
Yeah. Ready.
Okay. So we're at Mishna Dalet. We did it a little bit last time. I want to go through it one more time and then do Mishnah Hay and Mishnah Vav. Okay. So I'm doing Kahati here on Mishnah Dalet. La'achar shalomadnu b'Mishnah hakodemet. Since we learned in the previous Mishnah, Sha'af Shammai v'Hillel kiblu eseidusam shel hagardiyim v'chazru behem, that both Hillel and Shammai accepted the testimony of the lowly weavers at the dung gate, right? And reversed themselves based on the testimony of the lowly weavers about that they had heard the correct halacha from Shmaya and Avtalia. And Yeshlamdi Mikan, that what we learn from this is that the earlier halachas discussed in an earlier part of this chapter also bitlu datam. Hillel and Shammai reversed their opinions. And so we're now talking, what, 3 Mishnahs where in all of them, Hillel and Shammai reversed their opinions in favor of the opinions given by the lowly weavers at the dung gate. And so our Mishnah comes to teach if we're gonna not go with the position of Hillel and Shammai, but with the position of Hillel and Shammai's teachers, Shmaya and Avtalion, who were no longer alive, and whose positions we hear from 2 lowly weavers, then you have to ask the question: if you're composing a Mishnah for the purpose of having halachas recorded in posterity, what in the world do I need Hillel and Shammai's positions for if we reject them? Why should the first 3 Mishnahs of our chapter record the positions of Hillel and Shammai at all, since we are rejecting them? So that's what our Mishnah wants to deal with, and we did it last time, but it's so beautiful, I want to repeat it. What is the point? What is the point of the Mishnah asks of recording Hillel and Shammai's positions pointlessly? The Chachamim said, no, the halacha is not like Hillel and Shammai, A. And B, once they heard from the weavers, Hillel and Shammai themselves simply reversed themselves. So what is the point of repeating it? Answer: Lamed ledoros habaim, to teach the coming generations, the future, shelo yehe adam omed al dvarav, that it is not a good human quality to stand up for what you said in the past, just because you said it and you're not willing to let go of it. In other words, the Mishnah is being very critical of a kind of intellectual rigidity. Mishnah is not happy with people who just hang on to something that they said because they've said it. Okay? Shekain, and so he quotes the Tiferes Yisrael, Chesaron gadol hu b'nefesh ha'adam, it is a great flaw, it's a great stain in the human character, u'meniya gadola milavo el ha'emes, and it is a terrific barrier to ever getting at the truth. You have to be willing to hear positions other than yours and to adjust your position if the other party is correct. And that's exactly what people, even as great as Hillel and Shammai, right, the world champions of poskim, they changed their mind, and that's a great teaching for us. And here it is, Shehare Avos Ha'olam, at the fathers of the world, that's what some characterization, Shammai ve'Hillel, Lo Amdu Al Divreim, did not stick to their initial positions, Ubitlu Datam, and canceled their position, Be'edus Hagardiyim, in the face of the testimony of the lowly weavers. And Rambam has a different take. It's not that Hillel and Shammai reversed their positions, it's that the sages undid the positions of Hillel and Shammai. That's a little bit of a more difficult approach. I don't know exactly why the Rambam chose to look at it that way, but he did. Now we're going to move on. So, Agav HaMishna HaKodemes. So, given the previous Mishnah, Masifa Mishnah Seinu Leva'er B'chlal, our Mishnah comes to explain some of this in even greater general detail. L'shem ma movim b'Mishnah divrei hayachid, bizman shacholkim rabim alav v'halacha kamosa. Mishnah often says, that that one Tana says A, and Tanas B, C, and E say B. That's not a good way. I got to get my math straight here. Two Tanaim, P and Q. No. A single Tana, P, has a halachic position. Tanaim A, B, and C have an opposite position. In such a case, Acharei Rabim Lahatos, one always follows the
majority.
The road.
That's up. Now, if you're going to follow the majority, the Mishnah is saying, why record the minority? You know, there is a principle of parsimony. We write the Mishnah in the shortest, clearest possible way. Why record all these old opinions that are very sweet, but nobody follows them? So the Mishnah asks, the lama maskirin divrei hayachid bein hamarubim. Why record the position of the single Rav, the single posek, between all of the others that differ with it? Hoil v'ein halacha ela kedivrei hamarubim, because there is no halacha except for that of the majority. There's a principle, as Kahati puts it, that yachid v'rabim, a single person and a plurality, halacha karabim, the halacha always follows the majority. Now, she'im yira based in as divrei hayachid. So the Mishnah is answering here that if a bezdin, listen to this carefully, a bezdin composed of a minimum of 3 people, here's the position of a single Tana, right? And buys that position. Then, in other words, I'm just using Kahati, Kolomar, She'im you nirim levestin divrei hayachid. If the Beistin likes the position, accepts the position of some single speaker, the Yismoch Halav, that and relies on that individual posek to formulate its own halacha consistent with that of the single posek, and there is no opposing Beis Din that is challenging it, then Yachol Levatel Divrei Beis Din Chavero Hakodem She'asa Kedivrei HaYachid Achi Yagadol Mimenu B'Chachma. Then a second Beis Din that doesn't like what the first Beis Din paskind, and the first Beis Din paskind based on a single Tana's view, then the second Beis Din that wants to undo the position of the first Beis Din, that wants to override the position. Think of the American court system. Think of the what do you call the appellate court? Yeah, the appellate court wants to overrule. The appellate court cannot overrule the initial court unless the appellate court is gadol mimenu b'chachma uveminya. The appellate court can only overrule the initial court if the appellate court is greater both in quantity, number of judges, A, and B, in wisdom. And
who decides?
It's a very good question, but the assumption is that the Torah world knows who is the greatest of the Talmidei Chachamim. That is generally known. I do not know human Torah history of any case where this actually happened. This teaching that a Beis Din cannot overrule another Beis Din unless the second Beis Din is greater both numerically and qualitatively. This is taught all over Shas. All over Shas. Comes up again and again. And certainly comes up, what am I thinking of? It certainly comes up in Sanhedrin.
Yom Tov Sheni.
It comes up with regard to Yom Tov Sheni. It comes up in a lot of different contexts, and it's pretty universal, and it's usually not controversial. So the Mishnah goes on. Mishnah goes on.
Rabbi Polak,
Sure.
what about a case of halacha kabat ra'i? And it doesn't come up here, but I'm just
Say again, what's your question?
Halacha kabat ra'i, as opposed to the rov.
Oh, the issue again is when there is simply rov, you're right, that's not enough. But if the challenging Beis Din, I mean, I remember there was a major controversy in the Telzer Yeshiva. It had something to do with paying the Rabbeim, I think. And Telz was one of the great yeshivas in Cleveland, in Wickliffe, Ohio, was a magnificent yeshiva with a tremendous Talmidei Chachamim there. I met actually some of them and interacted with some of them, and they were champions. And they could not agree on a certain halachic procedure with regard, I think it was with regard to paying the teachers. So what they did is they actually paid the late great Rav Savitsky in Boston to fly out there and be the dayan and make the final ruling, because he was greater in Chachma than anybody that they had there. And it was a high moment in the life of Rabbi Savitsky. And I remember he came back from there and we talked about it a little bit. Now the Mishnah goes on, Haya gadol mimenu b'chachma aval lo b'minyan. If the second Beis Din is greater than the first in wisdom and not in number, And Kahati says that the Av Bezdin of the second challenging Bezdin is in fact greater than the head of the first Bezdin, Uva Minyan, and in the number of students, the students sitting around in the Bezdin. In other words, Chachma and Minyan is a reference. Minyan means the quality of the students that are participating in the Bezdin, and then and Chachma is who is the Av Bezdin, what is his knowledge. So over Minyan, Kati tells us that HaTalmidim sheyihi mispar HaTalmidim shal Bezdin ho acheres gadol mishal Bezdin hakodem, according to the Rambam. Then if it's, ein Bezdin yochol levatel divrei Bezdin chaverai b'takanas ugzeres u'minhagos. Aval even darshu bi'achas min hamidos kfi ma shenira b'yaneihem shehadin kach v'danu din v'yaman achreim Bezdin acher v'nira lo tam acher l'stor es hadin harez asoser din u'lefi ma shenira b'einav. So what's he saying? Can anybody tell me? Normally, if in other words, there are issues of number and there are issues of substance. If you have more intelligent, a greater group of associate judges, Talmidim, in one based in over another, then you could argue that you don't have to listen to the first based in. You can listen to the one that has a greater number, and let's say that the scholars are equal. What the Mishna is trying to tell us here is that it isn't just about how smart he is and how much Torah he knows. You can also look at the ruling itself. You with me? That if the ruling is consistent with the way the Torah extrapolates laws, in other words, the 13 principles of Rabbi Yishmael, and they're going exactly by the book on that, that is very hard to argue against. And then again,
Rabbi,
yes.
are we talking about, in these cases with the second based in, are we talking about an appellate process where people are challenging the decision of the first court? Are we talking about like a Paskin type of process where there was a religious law involved and the initial court made one decision and the second court wanted to review it and make a different posek?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's not a formal appellate system, and you can organize your own bezdin with your own people. That's one of the bezdin is chosen by the people. In other words, and if you have two what's the word? People who are having a case one against the other, then the halacha.
Litigants. Litigants.
I didn't hear what you said. What did you say?
Litigants.
The whole thing is like 10 hours.
I'm not hearing. I'm not here. I'm not here. The point is that you create something called a Beis Din Shel Borerin, which means that party A chooses a judge, party B chooses a judge, and the two judges choose the third judge. So it's a relatively open and free and democratic process. It is not biased against anybody. It is fair, and so on. So now, in such a system, um, I'm going to read Kate. Aval im darshu bi'achas min hamidos, k'fi ma shenira be'eneihem, shehadin kach v'danu din. So a bezdin, using the 13 principles of Rabbi Ishmael, comes up with a psak, and the dino din, and they make a halacha. The amad achreim bezdin acher, and another bezdin gets up. The niro lo tam acher listoras hadin, and that second bezdin finds a legitimate reason to contradict that ruling. Then you can actually do that, as it says, Here what he's talking about, I didn't make it clear, is a timeline. So in the 19th century, the Chassam Sofer decides to make a certain psak. It is now 100 years, it's more than 100 years, after the Chassam Sofer, and let's say Rabbi Willig and Rabbi Schachter in New York, or Rabbi Zalman Nechemia Goldberg in Yerushalayim and his Beis Din want to contradict the Chassam Sofer. So what he's saying, that if a later Beis Din comes in with a legitimate psak, you are not stuck with the psak of the Chassam Sofer. That's the news in our Mishnah. And so the Rambam asks, who ever heard of such a thing? Who ever heard that later poskim are greater than the earlier poskim? That makes no sense at all. Chol Beis Din shel Shivim v'Yechad, because every Beis Din is the greatest Beis Din of all, was the one that sat in the Beis Hamikdash. Meishiv, and so the Rambam answers, Zeh minyan chachmei hadar shehiskimu v'kiblu hadavar she'amru Beis Din hagadol v'lo chalku ba. He says, so we're not referring to generational stuff. We're talking about within the same, our mission is talking within the same generation. The Yesh Meforshim, others say that the word b'minyan in the numbers refers to two. Okay, so now, third piece of the mission. Haya gadol b'menu b'chachma avol lo b'minyan. What if the second Beis Din is greater than the first, not in number, but in wisdom? Or the second Beis Din is greater in number and not in wisdom? In such a case, Eino Yakol Vatel Devarav Achi Yu Gadol Mimenu B'Chachma. You need both qualities, Chachma and Minyan. And the Mishnah goes back to these words. It doesn't want to say Chachma or Minyan. It wants to say Gam b'Chachma, v'Gam b'Minyan. And he brings down also the position of the Ravid, who goes back to the original concept that I have to sneeze. Excuse me. He goes back, the Ravid goes back to the original position, and he says what this Mishnah is really about is that if a legitimate and competent Beis Din accepts the ruling of an individual, one guy, one posek, and really thinks that that psak is good, then it is allowed to follow that psak, even if there are alternative psakim that they could follow. They are allowed to follow that psak because they, the Beis Din, looking back at the ruling of the individual, have both capacity of numbers and of wisdom to do that. And that's how the Ravid reads our Mishnah. And now we're going to move to the sixth Mishnah here. Rav Yehuda says, This is Mishnah Vav. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda says, same question. The same question as the previous Mishnah, except it's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, so tell me one more time that when halacha is like the many, when there's a yachid and a rabbim, we follow the rabbim. Why is there any point, he asks again, like in the previous Mishnah, of mentioning the yachid? Mention the psak of the rabbim and say, this is the halacha, this is how you fill a mikveh. And there, he says that, he reads it as follows. Why do we even need to record the opinion of the single person in the face of the others? Answer, levatala, to, it's not a good idea to be somech. In other words, we're mentioning the opinion of the yachid to show you that we rejected that opinion. Rejected opinions need to be recorded. That if a person comes and says, I heard from my Rebbeim that this is the halacha, and the halacha is not like the psak of the Bezdin, they should say to him, you heard the opinion according to X, but the opinion that you heard was overruled by the many. So what the Mishnah appears to be saying is that we record all the positions, even the ones that are rejected, to know historically how we got to the psak that we have now. And I can tell you that when there are controversial positions, as there always are, on major and serious questions, I just got a shaila 15 minutes ago about a lot of rabbanim are not willing to accept the psak about the prenup. As many of you know, the OU and the RCA came up with a contract that the groom signs, saying that in the event that this marriage doesn't make it, then until the wife receives a get, I am liable to paying $50 a day to the Rabbinical Council of America, who in turn will actually give it to my favorite charity. But I have to keep paying $50 a day. The position has been criticized because it's coercing a get, and a get is not coerced. And the answer is, it's a completely independent contract that has no reference to the get, and it simply says that you're going to make a payment until the Rabbinical Council. In other words, if the RCA says, yes, this is what the prenup was about, you need to start paying, you are bound to pay, but you're not bound by Torah law. You're bound by the laws of your state, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to pay. So somebody called me today and said, do I really have to do this? And he said, Rabbi so-and-so in town, Rabbi so-and-so in town are completely opposed to it. And I said, you called the wrong guy, because I'm fully in favor of it. And not only am I fully in favor of it, but I said with the Av-Bed Beit Din of Yerushalayim, he should be healthy and well, Reb Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, who was also the senior editor of the Encyclopedia Talmudit. And I sat with him in the Encyclopedia Talmudit offices with other Rabbanim, and I said, what is your feeling about the prenup? And he said the prenup is the best thing that ever happened to Jewish couples, and I'm completely in favor of it. And I'm sorry to hear that there are Haredi Rabbanim who don't like it. And I says, I cannot understand their problem. So the Chassam Sofer would not have bought, I'm making this up, would not have bought into the prenup. Many Rabbanim would not have bought into the prenup. But now we have a Beit Din of serious senior Torah champions and super scholars that have bought in it entirely, and that's why the majority of American rabbis have in fact bought into this, and it's actually a good example of the things that we've been studying. However, in anybody writing about this has to bring in all the opinions, even the opinions that we are no longer observing. And how do we know to do this? From the Mishna that you and I just studied. And also, this is routine. When anyone is writing a tshuva on a new topic, he has to bring in all the opinions and all the arguments against his opinions. Otherwise, no one's interested in the tshuva. And I think that's where I'm going to end, but I'm open to any questions that you might have.
Do we have examples of classical examples where the new court overrules the old court? It is often brought as an excuse not to overrule, right? That's what usually pops up. Say, hey, we're not smart enough. We're not going to do that.
I think that one of the famous cases that just comes to mind is Takanas Ezra. Takanas Ezra is that in the event that a man exuded some kind of discharge from his milah, he is required to go to mikveh the next morning. Ezra, the scribe, the biblical Ezra, made a takana that therefore every man has to go to the mikveh every day. Okay?
Yeah,
so Ezra was roundly overruled in virtually every generation after him as a gzeira she'ein hatzibur yicholin lamod bo, as a gzeira that the community simply cannot live by. You cannot make a takana for a community that is too difficult for them to observe. So what I would say is that 90% of the Orthodox community does not observe it. But interestingly enough, after all these years, the Hasidic community does observe it and does go to the mikveh every day. And today, Dafka today, in the time of the coronavirus, this is a big issue for the Hasidic community, but it's not an issue for the Hasidic community that everyone is going to sit down and cry about, because the Hasidim are it's a takana that the Shulchan Aruch itself does not say is imperative. So it's one of those things that, you know, you can go with the minority community provided you don't contradict halacha. But this is an example of an optional chumrah that you can take on, and it's a very beautiful chumrah, the notion of going to the mikveh every day is a positive and a beautiful thing. And on the other hand, it is not a halacha and shulchan aruch, and you are not bound to do it. So that's why nobody is crying that the Hasidim can't go to the mikveh every day, except some Hasidim that I know. However, I can tell you that in the Warsaw Ghetto, there came a day when all the mikvahs were finally closed. And the Rabbanim went to the mikveh one last time, the Rabbanim and the Hasidim. I mean, you have no idea the volume of people. The Gerer yeshiva students in the Warsaw Ghetto numbered over 5,000. And I can tell you, they all went to mikveh every day. I mean, that's the size of Lakewood. It's a vast number. And when they closed the mikveh, they knew it was closed for good. And Nazi guards, Yimach Shemam, were standing outside the mikvahs, making sure nobody went in. And that was a piece of persecution. That is not true for us right now. It's a very different situation where we're simply unable to observe that because of the sakana that's involved, the human mortal danger that's involved in going to a bathhouse every day. I mean, it would be, even with all the chlorine, it would be just a breeding ground for the coronavirus. Everybody knows that. It doesn't mean that everybody is sad, but it is an example of something that was overruled for halachic reasons. Other questions? Okay, I love you all. I wish you.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I think I remember some mishnayot where the minority opinion was a halacha. I don't remember.
Yeah, there are plenty of mishnas like that. But that's exactly what our Mishnah is referring to. A subsequent Beit Din can say, I like the thinking of that position, and I want to legislate it, and that's okay. But you have to have very good reasons, and you, the non-judge, are bound. That's what the Mishnah is saying, by the Beis Din of today. The Beis Din, if it's a legitimate Beis Din, and makes a ruling today, because the Torah says, the Beis Din asher yihya bayamim hahem, in your day. So the primary Beis Din that guides your life is not the one that sat in the Beis HaMikdash, but the one that is that the Batei Din in your community that are sitting today. And we have had, I must tell you, several instances where Batei Din from other cities try to overrule us, and then apologize to us without our ever having to criticize them. And they said, we spoke to the people, they came to us, they wanted another psak. You can't go to another city and ask for another psak. But they did, they went and they asked, and we paskin. And you know what? I did 2 or 3 cases like that. The Beis Din from out of town said we were wrong. And we were wrong to take the case on because we don't know what goes on in Boston, just like you don't know what goes on in Muncie. And I wouldn't paskin for Muncie. You really, really have to know local circumstances in order to, about a local case, to know a psak. We had it for another, I'll give you another example. A guy came to us and said that he wants a get from his wife. The wife told him to get lost. I'm not going to accept a get from you. And, you know, and that's the end of the story. The guy, he came to us, and I said to him, I am confident. I knew the woman. I met with her. I met with her extensively. I knew her. I felt I knew her well. And I said, you're going to get your get, but it's not going to be on your timing. It's going to be on her timing, but it's not going to be 100 years from now. He was very impatient. He went to another Beit Din in another city, and the Beit Din in the other city, at a very steep price, allowed him to divorce her really against her will, using the system of when you get 100 rabbis. I'm giving it a full description. If you give her 100 rabbis who will sign off on the thinking, then he doesn't need to give her a get. The get is waiting for her to be picked up, and that's enough. And so he paid fortune, because it takes a lot of work to get 100 rabbis. I have no problem with the fortune that was charged, but I do it anyway. So he was charged a fortune, and he was able to, and the marriage was over, so to speak. I would say I still have the message on my phone machine. I don't know why I'm keeping it. About 3 months later, after he had spent his fortune and gotten his 100 signatures, she calls me up and she says, Rabbi Polak, you know, I think I have to go on with my own life. And if you want to make arrangements for the get, I'm happy to go along with it. And the Beit Din out of town said, you know, you were right and we were wrong. You gotta, the people in the community are the ones that know its population. And that's part of the principle of not doing Beit Din shopping. You can do Beit Din shopping in town, but you cannot do Beit Din shopping, you know, out of town. You don't need to go to Israel. You don't need to go to wherever Batei Din are formed, Brooklyn, whatever. And that's part of the teaching of this Mishnah.
I thought that you'd on a husband to write a get, not on a wife.
It's more complicated than that. Ever since Rabbeinu Gershom, we are not permitted to give a woman a get against her will. It's changed. Halacha changed. But halacha changed.
Right, but it doesn't mean that she has to give a get.
She has to agree to the get, otherwise they're still married. So, you know, if she doesn't agree to the get, you better go back to playing drums or wherever you amuse yourself. But
so it's not like in the good old days, you just throw it to her.
Those days are over.
Okay. Okay, so why did I read that Gemara?
Yeah, the Gemara says that. The Gemara,
Yeah.
once in a blue moon, once in a while, where there is an extremely difficult case, a Beit Din will pull that card trick, you know, out of the bag, but it's very rare. Eretz Yisrael almost never does it. And Eretz Yisrael, I mean, Rabbi Libero and I, half a year ago, went to the major Batei Din in Tel Aviv and in Yerushalayim to watch how they did it. You need to understand that Tel Aviv does 14,000 gittin a year. It's an assembly line. It's one after the other. It's like, you know, like it's a bad analogy, but it's like a Borough Park catering hall with one, you know, chasana after the other. So it's very rare. But I want to validate what you're saying, Mr. Patel. I just want to validate what you said. That every once in a while, this trick of throwing it into her reshus, where there's no other way, is used. It's not entirely mothballed, but it's very rare. It's very rare.
So
And
Yelena is asking how many weddings they have if they have 14,000 divorces, and is it people coming from the outside to get in Tel Aviv?
no, well, yeah, of course. Most sections of Israel is divided into rabbinic sections, and there is a chief rabbi. The number, I think there were about a dozen. I was once at a meeting of chief rabbis. There were a lot of them for different sections of the country, and each of them has their own jurisdiction. But if you're living in a city that does not have a Beit Din, then as often as not you will go to Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv is a vast area. It's not just Tel Aviv. It's sections south and sections north. I'm telling you, it's a vast number. We watched really an assembly line, and the building and the structure of the courtrooms was very much like, I don't know if you've ever been in the Dedham court buildings.
Mhm.
It's exactly like that, and it feels like that.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah.
I have
Other
a question. I have a
Yeah.
question, but it has nothing to do with this class. It's a different issue that I don't know if it's necessarily interest to the class. So
Ask the question.
it's about potato bread, and at what point is the status of potato bread being hamotzi versus mezonot? Because of this recipe that my wife has made, it has a lot of sugar. It has potato water. It still has a certain amount of wheat.
But the liquid that's used is water.
It's cooked potato.
The liquid.
Yeah. It's broken down potato.
So it's not water.
No, I shouldn't say it that way. Right.
Yeah, it's mazonos.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Get the bread making machine.
Still have
Yeah,
to,
we don't
we
do
just
that
did.
here.
you still have to make a bracha. Okay, Philip, it's nice to see.
Nice to see you. Thank you.
And this tonight is our last session. I hope you all learned some serious halachic structure, if not halacha itself. You did learn halacha itself.
Yeah.
And I look forward to learning with you other things in the future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you. Same here.